Are you judgmental? I've been thinking deeply about what it means to be judgmental and how there is this expectation that all people must be perfect, or that people must be nice all of the time, or that those who have committed some offense cannot be redeemed. For me, understanding judgment is also very much about grace. It's about giving people the benefit of the doubt and reflecting on any given situation before jumping to a conclusion, especially if it means I'm going to condemn someone or absolve them. In the last few months, I've seen a lot of condemnation that concerns me greatly. And this is what has inspired this episode. Hi, welcome to Defining You. I'm Helena J., a communications professional, voiceover artist, and MC. And this episode is all about how we cultivate empathy for each other and why we should be wary of hasty judgments. Listen to this episode to reflect on how judgment can inhibit our ability to see people for their full selves and why empathy, compassion, and forgiveness are traits we should aspire to. And if you are listening to this episode on Apple Podcasts, I'd appreciate it if you would leave us a 5-star review. It really helps people decide to listen to the show. And if you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave us a note in the comments. Let us know what you think. Thank you. All right, let's get to it. When Will Smith slapped Chris Rock at the Academy Awards, like many of you, I was shocked and disturbed. I couldn't and still can't understand how somebody like Will Smith could be compelled to strike another human being, let alone in that setting. It was bewildering. Then came the apologies. First, the day after the incident, the second came months later. Each time, his responses were sober and heartfelt. But it's clear as Will Smith's saga has gone on that his reputation has been irreparably harmed. He's been banned from the academy and he's lost opportunities. He did that to himself. But what's more, he's been all but shunned by some. For me, that hasn't sat right with me. I can't say this strongly enough, but Will Smith was wrong. Unfortunately, what Chris clearly meant as a joke about Jada's hair was not funny. She's been openly struggling with alopecia for years, and some subjects should stay off limits. The other piece of context here is that we have a complicated history with Black hair in the United States. Black women have been conditioned to change and alter their natural hair with harsh chemicals, and they've been encouraged by the media and society to look a certain way and have a certain appearance, or risk being unloved, or worse, risk being ridiculed. So I understand from Will's perspective, he was coming from a place of love and protection of his wife. Does that mean he was right? Again, absolutely not. There are many nonviolent ways he could have responded. Reacting in such a forceful manner, off or on stage, is never okay. However, a person can be more than one thing, even simultaneously. One moment, one mistake should not define a person for the rest of their life. Good people make mistakes, but you take ownership, self-reflect to make sure you do not repeat unacceptable behaviors. Last month, I did an interview with Diane Wilkerson. She's the former Massachusetts state senator who's running for public office again after resigning in scandal. She's been convicted of bribery and served time in prison. Prior to this interview, I didn't know much about Diane Wilkerson. All I remember hearing was about the scandal, and that was it. However, after reading up on her and looking into her background in preparation for my interview, I learned that there is so much more to the Diane Wilkerson story. Yes, she's made embarrassing mistakes, but knowing her story has given me some mixed emotions. At first, I felt sad. My heart was heavy, and I was disappointed because of what I imagined she could have become. But at the same time, I was also fascinated by her servanthood, her ability to mobilize communities, and her incredible accomplishments. She was truly a pioneer in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. But that history is somehow forgotten. Here was this intelligent Black woman who was revered by so many in the community and who showed so much promise and who made a terrible mistake. Now, people forget that she has helped secure the largest settlement to date for Black and Brown residents from the Boston Housing Authority. They forget that she was the first Black woman elected to the state Senate and the only Black woman in the Senate for much of her tenure on Beacon Hill. I still to this day cannot fathom how this could have happened to someone who was so highly regarded. People loved and admired her because she cared so much for her constituents. But there are those who are still very upset about what she has done, despite whatever loss she has suffered, and despite whatever she does to amend her misdeeds. I'm thinking especially of the service she has continued to do for the community since she was released, including her work on economic inclusion, political advocacy around the Boston Public Schools Board, and the COVID-19 response. These are all admirable things. As someone in touch with their emotions and who leads with their heart, it's hard for me to continue to condemn her knowing all of this. Hasn't she suffered enough? I can't help but empathize with her and what she has had to endure. I almost want to gloss over what has happened because it causes me great anguish. Now, between Will and Diane, I keep thinking about people who have committed serious offenses and have done all they could to amend for them. Whether that's an apology or a prison sentence, some form of justice have been meted out. So when is enough? Enough. I believe we should never judge people for the choices they make when we don't know the options they've had to choose from. I believe we shouldn't be quick to judge or find fault with others without looking at the whole person. And I believe we should never forget that we all have flaws. So I ask you, my listeners and my audience, to take a moment to reflect on any situation and whether you know the full story before you come to a conclusion. Be willing to give others grace. And more than that, give people the benefit of the doubt. We have to train our minds to look at the full picture and then make a judgment. No, not everyone is deserving of a second chance, but most people are, especially if we are willing to forgive. Rachel Griffiths once said, "There's nothing as exciting as a comeback, seeing someone with dreams, watching them fail, and then getting a second chance." The bottom line is that you should be willing to forgive because you never know if you will be in need of forgiveness one day. In Matthew chapter 12, verse 31, the Bible says, "And so I tell you, every kind of sin and slander can be forgiven, but blasphemy against the Spirit will not be forgiven." Thank you so much for listening to this solo edition of Defining You. It's the last one of this series. Now, I'm going on a much needed break after this while I work on season 2 of Defining You. But I'll be back to interviewing guests. You can still get updates from me while I'm on break by following me on Facebook and Instagram. Just search for Helena J now. The links will be in the show notes. And if you are interested in becoming a guest on the show or know someone who should be, reach out to me by emailing me at connectwithhelenaj@gmail.com. You can find the email address in the show notes. Now, take care, my friends. You'll hear from me soon. I hope you enjoyed Defining You. Thank you.